Well, hello, everyone. Thanks, Andrew. We've got a lot to talk about today, not a lot of time to do it, as is sort of always the case in these conferences. But pleased to be here inside Andrew, talk about a range of different topics that I think will be interesting and stimulating. So let's start off with a topic that you're known for, deep learning, machine learning. And you founded the original machine learning team at Google, and now are doing a lot of that work at Baidu. So when you think about deep learning, what it means, why isn't it relevant? How do you think about deep learning, machine learning?
I think over the last several years, there's a lot of hype about deep learning. And I think what's happened is that in the last maybe decade or so, with the rise of the internet, with the rise of mobile, all of us started to collect a lot more data about user behavior, be it what things users are buying, what links users are clicking on, the data that users enter into various websites. And that took off very rapidly. And it's only maybe 2 or 3 years ago that with the rise of deep learning algorithms that we come up with more and more effective ways, really the best, right now, probably the best ways to exploit this huge amount of data. And I think when I was leading the Google deep learning team, we were using cloud computing technologies. Now at Baidu, we're developing supercomputers, which I think is the next generation to build sort of even larger and larger machines in order to absorb this data that we now have access to. And I think this data is very valuable in terms of creating better services for users, as well as helping with companies. For example, if any of you use speech recognition today, chances are that's actually almost certainly powered by some form of deep learning algorithm, and that's because with so much audio data that deep learning algorithms are very good at learning from this audio data in order to learn to transcribe speech. And this is one of the trends, just one of the trends I'm excited about, because I think with the whole world moving to mobile devices, I think if you can talk to your cell phone rather than type on these tiny little keyboards, I think it'll be a much better user interface for a lot of things. And so these things are really powered by a lot of intelligence applications on your cell phone, are powered by deep learning already.
So when you think about even just something with voice, right? I talked about voice for decades, and now you're starting to see it really come into the mainstream. Mm-hmm. Do you think that this will be commonplace in terms of natural language in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, quicker?
Yeah. Hard to say. I do see, at Baidu, we see a very rapid rise in voice searches. And I think that, depending on how clearly you speak, maybe voice recognition today is, let's call it 95% accurate, right? I think most people underestimate the difference between 95 and 99% accurate speech recognition. If it's 95% accurate, it works a lot of the time, but sometimes it makes an error and it's just annoying to have to correct speech recognition's mistakes. I think that speech recognition that is 99% accurate, if we can get there, which I hope we will, I think 99% accuracy is game-changing. You'll be using it all the time and you won't even think about it. Just as, I think Apple wasn't the first to invent a touchscreen, right? I think HTC actually had a touchscreen phone before Steve Jobs and Apple announced the iPhone, but it didn't work nearly as well. And when it became reliable, really thanks to Steve Jobs, the iPhone, and now all of us just use our touchscreens without even thinking about it. And I think there is a chance that voice will undergo a similar transformation if any of us can, make speech work and just make it reliable.
A lot of times when we think about machine learning, we start thinking about predictive intelligence, right? And some of this can be relative to consumer markets, where maybe your phone knows your schedule for lunchtime, and that you have no plans, and that you like sushi, and that you're not far from a sushi restaurant. But beyond that, when you think about predictive intelligence, which I think can also speak to this broader Internet of Things trends, right? When I get sensors all over my city and my home, how do I not just connect objects to the internet, but do I make them smarter? So what's the role you see for deep learning and machine learning within that predictive intelligence?
Yeah, let's see. I think, one thing about machine learning is that there are a few verticals where it's creating tremendous value for users and companies. So, at Baidu, web search, advertising, really how we monetize, speech recognition, how we understand images, all of this is driven by deep learning, by machine learning and deep learning. And I think in terms of predicting what you do tomorrow, I know there are many teams at many companies working on these things using modern machine learning. I feel like we're still trying to figure out exactly what are the vertical applications we want to nail down for some of those things. But the machine learning researchers are certainly trying right now.
Yeah. So we talked about this. I thought it was a good way in which you framed it. Does all of this just run in the cloud on the back end, or can we have these types of supercomputers in other form factors as well?
Yeah. One of the challenges of deep learning is so deep learning just means building neural networks, right? Very crude simulations of the brain, let's say, incredibly crude simulations of the brain. But we do these things with supercomputers. By some metrics, the sorts of machines we build would be definitely one of the relatively high-ranked supercomputers in the world, right? If we were to try to benchmark against those things. So after we've trained these giant neural networks on a supercomputer, do we need supercomputers all over the place to run these, or can we get it to run on your mobile phone? So one of the recent trends in machine learning and deep learning is coming up with ways to take these giant brain simulations trained on a supercomputer and to compress it so they can even run on your cell phone. So one of the things I want to show you today, I've actually not shown this in the United States before, is an application that we announced in China, that I announced in China several weeks ago, in which we use deep learning algorithms to look at your face, the picture of your face, and track a very large number, track 72 key points on your face, so we can understand your emotions and the emotional expression on your face. Actually, could you project up my cell phone? And what I want to do was give you a quick live demo of, let's see. Can you project my cell phone up to the screen? Oh, okay, wonderful. What I want to do was give you a live demo of this application. So we wanted to be able to take your facial expression and take your friend's face, and have you be able to map your friend's face onto yours. Let me just show you an example. So, this is one of the lead engineers in China that wrote this app. This girl. I was with Travis Kalanick when I was on stage announcing this. So I took his picture, and this is what I would look like. I love making fun of my wife, so this is actually, this is Carol, and sort of, this is Robin, this is Baidu CEO, as well as some other fun ones, and so, hopefully you can tell, lots of opportunities to take your friends' pictures and make fun of them, or take various other download pictures off the internet of people, and put it on and make fun of them. So we announced this in China several weeks ago. It's gone somewhat viral in China. We haven't launched it in the United States, but we plan to do that in the next small number of months, very small number of months. But I think the reason I was excited about that, this is a fun entertainment thing, right? A lot of users enjoy using it. But the thing that powers this is our mobile deep learning engine, where we took a giant 200 megabyte neural network trained on one of our smaller supercomputers, and you can't have a 200 megabyte executable, right, to download to a cell phone. So we did a lot of work to compress that down to a much smaller, I think it's an 800 kilobyte executable, so that you can actually download it on your cell phone. So that's one of the technology demonstrations that I was quite proud of. And when we announce it in the US, I hope all of you will have fun playing with it and using it to. I use it to make fun of my wife. You can find your own applications for it.
Now, would you consider that kind of augmented reality in terms of application, and and beyond just that, what are some of the other? When we talk about augmented reality, sometimes it's holding it over a point of sale at retail and getting information of a product. But are those again more within line for how you see that playing out?
Yeah, I think augmented reality will be exciting. There's been a lot of hype about virtual reality. I feel like a lot of the optimism about virtual reality might be, I think it'll be a while before we're a lot of VR, but I think AR, augmented reality, see a lot of applications for that coming down the pipe. So this is an example of augmented reality, and I hope that with these technologies, Baidu, we and our partners will be able to launch new augmented reality applications to show you more insight into the physical world around you.
So one of the topics that I wanted to touch on, since we're in Silicon Valley and you are in China, is a hot topic that I engage in quite frequently, which is can US companies, can even US startups really compete in China? I mean, when I study the Chinese landscape, you look and it's dominated by local winners, in almost every single category. So what's your thought? I mean, you guys in Baidu, obviously you've got presence on the web, you've got an app store, you sort of see what's being successful. How should US companies think about China competing in China, and can they compete in China?
Yeah, I think absolutely yes, right? US companies can absolutely be very successful in China. I think, Apple, Uber, Cloudflare, some of these are companies we work with, are all doing very well in China. If I were to flip the question around and ask, can a Chinese company compete in the US? And what advice would you give to a Chinese company that wants to compete in the US? Right, think about what you would say to that Chinese company. So a lot of those similar advice works, I think, in the reverse direction, which is just that the US market and the China market are so different. For a Chinese company to operate effectively in the United States, they need tons of local knowledge. And actually, in my opinion, the China market is more different than the US market than I would say any other market in the world. Maybe India, but I don't know India as well. But China is definitely more different than the US than, say, Europe or most of Southeast Asia, right? And so without local and the ecosystem, the competition, the competitive pressures, and the culture is so different that if you don't understand the local context, it's very difficult for an American company that doesn't really understand the China market to make effective decisions. China mobile apps, they look different, smell different, the authentication mechanism is totally different. If you take a Chinese app and translate, if you take an American app and translate into Chinese, it just won't smell like it was localized properly. So there's a lot of local knowledge. Actually, even before joining Baidu, when I spent a lot of time in China to help Coursera, this company I co-founded, I'm chairman, co-founder Coursera, to help Coursera enter China. And it took spending a lot of time in China to figure out what's really going on in China. Those of us that talk about China, we like to use the phrase, everything is different. We all use that phrase. That phrase kind of isn't helpful because I'm not quite sure what people are supposed to do with that advice. But the ecosystem, the user behaviors are so different. I don't know how else to convey that other than to advise that you spend a lot of time in China. One of the ways for companies to acquire that local knowledge is to partner with a China domestic partner. So that's been another mode of operation that's popular. Baidu works closely with Uber. And I think Uber's top 3 or maybe more by now cities are all in China. And I would take credit, or Baidu, I would take credit for Baidu and Uber working together to make that happen, with Uber having amazing technology, and we all know and love Uber, right, here in San Francisco. But then also Baidu assisting them with the localization, the growth, the channels. Cloudflare is another example that maybe let few of you know about, but I think Cloudflare is one of the companies with amazing technology for making the internet faster and more secure. And I think, we work with them, and their growth in China has been astronomical. So that's just one mode of operation. Even Coursera has worked with a few domestic partners, Gawker, NetEase in China. That's helped a lot. But again, and I think other companies, I think Evernote, LinkedIn, Apple is doing amazingly well in China. Definitely possible, but I would say, go spend a lot of time. Travis is spending 100 days in China this year. Right? Travis Kalanick, the CEO of Uber, spending 100 days in Uber this year. So it takes a lot of local knowledge. I'll talk to Wen Chu, right, the co-founder of GMIC. I find that American entrepreneurs learn a lot from him as well to try to do well in China.
So when you think about that, is that more a look for people to partner with in China? Maybe even just bigger companies who aren't there yet. Is it good to acquire into China? I mean, those are two strategies I hear frequently. Is that good advice?
Yeah, I think it's difficult to substitute having your leaders spend enough time in China to really understand what happens. I'll give you some example. I guess those of you that live in China know, right? Almost every single app in China uses a text message to authenticate. This is a very rare thing in the US. And so if you want to have an app in China that even smells like a Chinese app, this is just a prerequisite. And there's just such basic differences that pretty much every Chinese internet user knows about. But I definitely see American companies that take the American app, translate into Chinese, and it just doesn't smell like a Chinese app, right?
Yeah. So last topic I wanted to hit on is the O2O, or online to offline. And we call this the on-demand economy. So we've got people, strolling around the city in blue jackets who will park your cars. We have people who will deliver you a burrito. But this is really big in China. So I wanted you to kind of talk a little bit about that, maybe some of the reasons why it's unique and working really well at scale in China, where we don't quite have the same scale here, even in cities like San Francisco.
Yeah, so O2O, online to offline, might be the biggest internet trend that many people in this room haven't heard of. So I think that actually, it is taking off in the US as well, but not yet at the same scale at which we see it in China. And I'll be honest, even working for Baidu, right? I was reading analyst reports, my friends were telling me about it, but honestly, I feel like I did not get O2O until I got my Xiaomi phone, the China Xiaomi phone, and spent a bunch of time in China, used these apps, and kind of really understood what the O2O really is in China. So maybe some examples, right? When it's China, here in the US, when I want to get my car washed, have to drive to the car wash, wait for it to be washed, drive home. It takes me about an hour to get my car washed. In China, I took out my phone. I don't have a car in China, but I want to buy a friend a car wash. And I timed myself in 60 seconds, not an hour. By pressing buttons on my cell phone, I could get someone to show up and wash one of my colleagues' car. In China, when I was hungry in a hotel room, right? Ordered food delivery. It took 26 minutes for food to be delivered to me. And yes, here we have DoorDash, Grubhub. My wife and I use DoorDash. But there's a big difference when you're hungry. When you're hungry, there's a big difference between waiting 26 minutes and waiting an hour. And I think if you're sick, by pressing buttons on your cell phone, you can get someone to go to a drugstore to pick up the drugs and deliver it to you. I was really hot in the Beijing summer, so I ordered a fan online, and it was delivered several hours later. And yes, with Amazon Prime, it would have taken 2 days, but it was delivered several hours not 2 days later. So I think that O2O, this concept of using your cell phone as a remote control for the physical environment around you, is taking off very rapidly in China. Oh, if you want a manicure, press a few buttons on your cell phone. Someone will show up in your house to give you a manicure or a massage. Or a chef can show up in your house to cook your dinner for you. And yes, we kind of have all of these things in Silicon Valley, maybe especially in San Francisco. But I find DoorDash a little bit expensive. My wife and I don't use DoorDash all the time just because it's pricey. In China, it's so cheap, you just don't think about it. And I found it hard to emotionally understand O2O until, like you're hungry in a hotel room and someone delivers food to you. So I think that some of the reasons that it's taking off rapidly in China are very high population density. So a lot of O2O is about logistics, right? So take food delivery. Food delivery is all about technology to efficiently route the drivers to pick up the food when it's just cooked, to deliver it to you while it's still hot and while you're still not too hungry, right? And I think the high population density is enabling that to take off, much more rapidly in the dense Chinese cities than in less densely populated areas. I predict that as technology improves, logistics technology in this case, but as technology improves, it'll become economical for O2O services to be deployed even in slightly less dense areas. And so I somewhat look to the really dense populations, China, maybe India. I've spent less time in India, but especially China as a maybe trend for where O2O or on-demand and so on might go in the United States as well. I think it's a high population density and also relatively low labor costs. And also I think China has leapfrogged, right, laptops to mobile, and mobile, all of you know, has a GPS that allows you to connect yourself to services in the physical environment around you. So I think as technology improves, we'll see those ideas propagate outside the dense Chinese cities. Oh, and so one thing I did on a recent trip to China was I really felt I didn't understand O2O deeply until I sat in China, I used a bunch myself when I was hungry, when I wanted whatever. So one thing I did was I used my iPhone, which you saw me hold up just now, to shoot a bunch of short, 2 to 5 minute videos of myself using my Xiaomi China and Xiaomi phone to order these O2O services, because I wanted a set of short videos to show, even an American audience or global audience what O2O feels like in China. And I thought seeing videos might be the best thing other than being there yourself to check it out. So I posted these videos on my personal webpage of andrewng.org just last week, I think. Fortune actually wrote up an article on these 8 videos I post online. But if any of you want to get like a deeper, visceral understanding, emotional understanding of O2O, you can watch those 8 videos I posted on. They're sort of not super professional videos. I shot them myself, most of them myself using my iPhone. But hopefully that you can get a sense of O2O in China for those of you that are interested.
Well, really interesting. Well, we're out of time. Thanks, Andrew, for spending the time with us, and hope you guys have a great show.
Thank you. Thanks, Ben.